Guys, we're so glad that all of you could be with us here today as well. And let's start off right on that very question about opportunities, Casey, because it is the one that all of us are wondering. Do girls now have the same opportunities as boys, in your opinion?
Better opportunities, especially in the female game. You know, I think when I was younger, you look at, there was no girls' teams. You got banned from mixed sport at 11, so your opportunity to play football or any other sport with boys was gone from 11. Now we have Wildcats programs, there's girls teams, grassroots teams, elite level teams. So the opportunities are there, but I'd still say there's a lot of barriers for girls to overcome to be able to play sport, any sport really.
How much do you think it has changed, Niamh, in your time from when you started to what you're seeing now in terms of those opportunities?
To be honest, I think with individual sport, it's a bit different. Certainly in the elite level, if you're good, you're good. I don't think there's much difference what gender you are. I'm only in the sport, 7 or 8 years now, but I suppose I really didn't have a lot of experience what it was like before my time, because I only got into sport after London 2012, but I think that was a bit of a turning point itself. So I came in after that.
And do you think even in that small time, I know it's obviously a relatively small period of time though, Niamh, but like the strides, it seems to me, have been so giant in that even 8 years of that gap?
Yeah, for sure. I think obviously with the 2020 campaign, it's been massive. You see sponsorships coming in, you see more funding for women. There is improvements there for sure, but it's still not 100%. It really depends what sport you're in, but it's not equal. I wish it was, but we're not there yet.
In terms of what you're seeing out there, Rachael, obviously you're in a sport where men and women are on the same turf, literally, as well. So what are you seeing in terms of those opportunities, and how have they changed even since your career has taken you to becoming a professional?
Yeah, I suppose I'm very lucky in the industry that I'm in. The doors were opened for me by the likes of Katie Walsh and Niamh Carberry and their achievements, and plenty gone before them as well. But they really opened the door for me to go into a weigh room and go into an industry where the stigma was gone. And it's a privilege to be a part of that industry, I suppose, where you're essentially given opportunities on your ability. There probably still is a shade of leaning towards a male rider if the female, if you have a male and a female rider and neither has had any opportunities yet or proven their worth, there is a slight leaning still towards the male rider, but I think that's improving the whole time. And it's we'd be very proud to be part of that industry where we are just treated on our ability.
Why do you think that is, Rachael, where there's still that little bit of a leaning towards a young male jockey as opposed to a young female?
I suppose because there's just not that many of us, but that's definitely on the up. You've got apprentices there like Siobhan Rutledge doing really well on the flat. But it's definitely improving.
What are you seeing then, Casey, in terms of that visibility piece? Because obviously even from when you were a player to now when you're a manager, things have obviously changed so drastically. But even for you now being Manchester United manager, the fact that there is a Manchester United women's team is progress in itself.
Yeah, listen, absolutely. I can't hide away from the fact that the club didn't have a women's team for so many years, and one of the biggest clubs in the world. But I think now with that brand, with the women's team, I think it increases the visibility of the game automatically. But I still think there's so much to do. You look at the percentages in terms of media coverage online and in print, and it's still far too low. If I always say that if someone wants to be something, they need to see it. And I think visibility is still pretty low in female sport. And, we're lucky in football that I actually think women's football gets more coverage than most female sports. We've had a 2012 Olympics that boosted the game, a 2015 World Cup bronze medal that boosted the game. And then obviously we've had a lot of games on BBC and World Cup games on that as well, which has really boosted the audience. But I think women's sport always has to fight for really marginal columns, which it shouldn't have to do. And I think in the print, really, I think we need to move away from the narrative of talking about backstories and talking about results and performances, and then we'll know that we're winning.
Is the bar a lot higher, Casey, for women, in terms of it has to take that level of success? It has to take the women's team to go and win a bronze medal to not just get out of the group, that they're suddenly, that's what changes when they get a bit more coverage.
Absolutely. I think you have to go and be successful in a tournament. And I've always said that, club football for men in England is massive. Champions League is massive, but in the women's game, I think England have to do well in World Cups and European Championships, and then that filters down. But doing well for us is winning a World Cup, getting to a semi-final, getting to a final, to even probably get, even a mention in the papers or online. So it is difficult, but it's improving. Is it improving quick enough? I would suggest not.
It's a funny thing, Niamh, isn't it? Because it's a chicken and egg scenario where you need the success to get the coverage, but then, with the success, then obviously becomes the demand then for more coverage. But even on a local level, I know you've seen this. Suddenly, when you come back from Rio with a Paralympic silver medal around your neck, kids know who you are. They want to see more of you. They want to talk to you on the street, and it all kind of feeds into it, doesn't it?
Oh, completely. I mean, I've lived in this house now since 2012. It's a big park. There's kids everywhere. But after Rio, I did all of the school visits. I think there's 9 or 10 schools in Carrigaline. I did 9 in one day, just so that everybody could kind of get the opportunity, because it wasn't my medal. I wanted to kind of share it with the town as well. And I met all these kids, but afterwards, I had kids knocking on my door and young girls saying, "Oh, does Niamh live here?" Because it would be, say, my mother answering the door or something. They didn't know who I was before, and now they do. And even only recently, I was outside, and the neighbours have 2 new kittens that I was just watching at a distance. And I was speaking to this young girl who, I don't know, she's maybe 12 or 13, if that. And we're halfway through a conversation. She's like, "Oh, are you the one who's in the Paralympics?" And I hadn't told her at any point, but she knew that, I'm assuming, through going to see the schools and for these girls to actually meet me and everything. It was a massive thing, because it's great for the media to cover me and everything, but kids aren't necessarily reading newspapers and watching the news. So, those school visits are extremely important, and actually being out with them and meeting them so that they can see, you're a real person who did this,
I think the other thing, Rachael, is that they identify that you were them before as well. Like, I know you were speaking there about Katie Walsh and Nina Carberry and what they did for you, but I'm sure there's plenty of young girls in this country who might want to be jockeys now, who want to be Rachael Blackmore. And I'm sure for all of you guys as well, that's a big part of your legacy that you need to build on as well.
Yeah, definitely. I've definitely gotten a few copies of your book in the post for me to sign and send back, and they've all been from young girls, and it's a fantastic book, and it's fantastic for them to be able to flick through it and see and visibly see people for them to look up to, and yeah, like it's great when there is people there for them to look at.
I think when you look at it, Casey, kids now have so many more visible role models than they did when we were kids. I kind of think, like, particularly in Ireland, in this country, we had Sonia O'Sullivan, and it seemed for so many years like it was Sonia O'Sullivan only. And I don't know if now for young girls, it's the exposure, it's the everything that comes with it. I think young girls now can just look around, and if they want to be a footballer, they know now they can go to England and they can play for your team or another team. It's the endless possibilities that are now there for girls. And obviously there's a huge amount to be done, but I do often think sometimes the world of positivity that's there about the amount of things that young girls now can be is also just so amazing that maybe even me, a 10-year-old me, didn't think that those opportunities might ever be there.
Yeah, and I think, like you say, the world's changed, the landscape's changed. Social media gives access to kids to see so much more now as well in terms of visibility. And I think they can see more now. It's also knowing there's so many different avenues they can go down in sport. If they don't necessarily want to perform and they don't want to be involved in the sport, they can go into the media, they can go into the broadcast. There's so many more opportunities now for little girls to get into sport in any way, shape or form. And it's just having the opportunities. And I think that also, I always say your role models are your sporting heroes, but also your parents as well. So it's influencing those parents to take their little kids to teams and give them opportunities and let them try different things and throw them into things so that they know what they like and what they don't like. Because, I've got 3 kids. I want them to try absolutely everything, and then they'll decide what they like. And I want to be that parent that sits on the sideline, just encourages them and takes them there and takes them home, and so they've got that safe space to play.
And look, I think sometimes as well, the language that we are trying to use when you're trying to show kids those opportunities is so important as well. And even, I think sometimes the way, Casey mentioned social media there, Rachael, just the way that we show the girls the world. And social media has a big part in doing that as well, that we show them, look, these are the positives, there are some negatives, but you can control this. And like as parents, but as people as well, you want to be able to sort of have control of that narrative and just say, look, this is the world that's out there, but I want this to be a positive one for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for that generation, 12 to 15-year-olds, there's a big drop off at that age playing sport. And for me, their world is on social media.
Yeah.
So, everyone needs to support the female athletes on social media, and then that will in turn build their profiles and get the younger generation to connect with them. It's all about getting them to connect and getting a following and encouraging them to stay doing sport. That's the little girls of 6 and 7. The dreams are alive. That they're easily. It's much easier to help them dream. It's when you're at those older ages, it's harder, and social media is where they're at. So that's a massive thing, and that needs to be definitely helped and looked at.
Yeah, because we've seen the negative side of that, Niamh, as well, where social media, it's a place for people to comment, and I suppose so many people can do it anonymously as well, and that's a big problem. And I think for athletes, sometimes that can be a difficulty where, you're putting yourself out there in that world, but you're also allowing people to comment, and particularly young girls. It's a really difficult space to navigate, isn't it?
It can be. I mean, I've thankfully been very lucky on social media. I mean, the people who support me, I mean, some of them, are from my family and friends, and others the strangers across the country and the rest of the world. But, it can be a problem, and I've seen it even today. There was an article about a girl from table tennis, and I read the comments, and I was just bitterly disappointed, honestly. I mean, I didn't engage myself, but it was about a girl, succeeding in her sport. And the comments, just didn't really back that up. I was really disappointed. So it's a problem. But at the end of the day, I kind of feel like it's my job to do what I can to, speak out for girls in sport. It's not about me. It's just about the sport and girls in general. So, I'll put up with it if I have to. But ideally, that's not the world we want to be living in.
And I think, Casey, what we're seeing more is that people are saying that's not the world I want to live in, and people are calling out biases, and whether that's on social media or in the media as well. And I know you have strong thoughts about this as well, about the language that we use, and when we do feel that something is not right, that we say it.
I think we all have a responsibility to stand up and step up in those times and show the example that it's not okay, and I've done it a few times myself, and I've been absolutely vilified for just being a woman playing football, being in the game, being told to get back in the kitchen, any award I have, it'll look good in your kitchen. And I call people up on that because I just don't think it's acceptable in this day and age. I also think we have a responsibility to show the real world on social media for ourselves as well, the struggles that we go through to get to the elite level, because not everything's perfect. Not everything has to look perfect. You don't ever always show the end result. I think you have to show the process to what it took to get there too, so that everybody goes, it's okay to fail. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay that I don't get it right every time. And it's okay that I'm going to have to work hard, because that's the real world. So we have a duty and a responsibility as athletes to show the real version of us, but also we have a real responsibility to call people out when it's not okay.
Because those examples of when it's not okay that you're saying there, if they go unchallenged, that then becomes part of the narrative that's almost, oh, look, that's just how we deal with it. And if it, like, there's a certain amount of this is, oh, that's just the way it is, but if it's not the way it is, then that's what's actually going to create the new norms. And whether that's challenging things that's not okay to say that, or whether it's right to say, look, I deserve to get paid the same as that guy, or whatever it is a responsibility on a wider group to say, this is the way we're going to move forward, and this is actually the new normal.
Yeah, listen, I think we all have a responsibility. I also think those social media platforms themselves have a responsibility to call out poor language, poor behaviour. And I always have a responsibility as a parent to raise my little boy to be kinder, to be more caring, and be more respectful to women, so that when he grows up in the workplace, he knows that his sisters are unequal.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's hugely important as well. What about your feelings on the team sport versus the individual sport? Because I think, Niamh, this is something that you mentioned a little bit earlier on, even that I suppose in your world, it was a little bit different even when you were coming into this. But I often think when it comes to athletics and even racing as well, when you're in an atmosphere where men and women are actually in the same arena, those sports are often treated kind of differently. Whereas I think like some of the things that even I can identify with what Casey's talking about, because team sport was really what I did. Whereas I often think for you guys, when you're individual athletes, you feel so differently about it because you've always been in the same arena, Niamh. You know, you've never kind of known any different, if that makes sense.
Yeah, completely. I mean, that's exactly it. You know, we're in the same arena at the same time. You know, I'm doing my discus throw in this corner while the men's shot puts the other side. You know, there's no favorism necessarily because, you know, when you're at elite level in the Paralympics or the Olympics, you're not really there to watch the guys or the girls. You're there usually to just watch the event that you're interested in. Or maybe there are certain, you know, athletes that, you know, you're Usain Bolt and all that, but there's many different athletes that they get the limelight that they need, you know, because at the end of the day, like Rachael was saying, if you have the ability, that's all that really matters. So that's, yeah, a nice position to be in athletics, I suppose.
And do you think it has helped your sport over the years with Paralympics and we even athletics in general, that even in that, let's say you're doing the discus, somebody else is sprinting, there's something else going on. Has that helped female sport, that it has been given that platform?
I think so, but the biggest problem that I face, it's not the gender split necessarily, it's just the coverage the Paralympics gets overall.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we've had championships where, you know, you might get a live stream, but that live stream doesn't show everything. And even, you know, just a team flying out to a championship, you know, if nobody knows about it, nobody's going to be watching that live stream. There was one championship myself that I got really annoyed because after the able-bodied had been on, I saw pictures of athletes surrounded by journalists and everything, and we were already on our flight off, and there hadn't been a peep. So I took it on myself to go on my Instagram, and I was at the end of the program. I had a lot of time to kill, and I covered every single event. In the meantime, just so that people could actually hear about these athletes, because obviously people who followed me knew when I was on, but there was other athletes in the team that might not have never heard of them. So, you know, I was just trying to give the team overall, I suppose, a platform to actually be seen.
In fairness, your coverage was unbelievable as well. There was a fair bit of crack involved in it too, as only you can bring to the table. And Rachael, what about that feeling that Niamh brings about the one arena? Because for you, it's such a unique sport in that men and women actually race side by side. So, like, I would imagine your views on this are kind of so different and so far removed from a lot of the team circumstances where those things that they're fighting for, you're just not even seeing them in some ways.
Yeah, look, and it's a privilege to be a part of that. You know, you're not treated any differently. It's all the same. Your job is the same as the guy riding beside you. You know, like there, for instance, we were racing in Tremor today, and the last race on the card was confined to lady riders. So there is a certain number of races confined to lady riders. The bumper today, which was a flat race. And that's there to try and encourage and help them to get opportunities to get going. And they're a big help as well. But that race was 100% watched by a bumper yesterday, which had male and female in it. You know, it wasn't any less supported in any way.
And do you think those kind of things, Rachael, have to happen where like a certain criteria is put in place, like there has to be a women's only race in order to actually attract more riders to it? You know, because like I'm sure there's plenty of people who say, why isn't there a men only race or why isn't there whatever? But at some point, it's like we were saying, maybe you need to be bold and do something a bit different in order to encourage girls. So do you think programs like that, they have to happen?
Yeah, look, they were a big help. They were a massive help for me to get going. They allowed me to showcase what I was able to do and get more practice racing. So they were a big help for me. And as I said, there still is a slight stigma with girls starting off. Like we'll say now, I'm uneligible to ride in those races because I'm established. So they're for people they're for people who aren't established yet in the main. So they're very important. They're very important for those people. You know, there is races as well confined to people who haven't ridden a certain amount of winners. They're the same idea. You know, they're to give people a chance.
Yeah, they're a good idea. As we come to the end of this, I suppose what we're trying to leave here today with everybody walking away thinking about the questions that they want asked. And Casey, obviously there's so many challenges out there and about how we're going to progress this further. But if there was one thing that you wanted for people to take away today in terms of a question that you'd like to see asked and what you would like to see for the future, what would it be?
I think for me, for young girls, one of the questions I would ask is, why is physical education not a core subject at school? For me, if that was to change, I think it changes the confidence of young people, because the delivery of it would be better in schools. It would increase the confidence of young girls in their physical literacy. So therefore, they wouldn't get to 12, 13, 14, 15 and have that self-awareness that might make them drop out of sport, which is where we lose so many girls out of sport in general.
And it's the one area that nobody has still managed to get to the bottom of, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I think all governments have a responsibility for this. I worry in this pandemic, to be honest, that because maths and science and English are so important, that the first thing that will go out of the window is physical education. But there's so many benefits to young girls doing physical education. It's not just about physical well-being, it's about mental well-being too, and giving the young girls an opportunity to do sport and putting an importance on it.
Yeah, and look, and we've seen the benefits of that. Like, there's so many studies have shown what it does for them mentally, physically, their confidence, their teamwork, leadership, everything that sport can bring to a young girl. So that's definitely a good one. What about you, Niamh, if there was one that you were trying to get people to take away today, this question that you would like to see asked and indeed probably answered over the next 10 years or so?
It's a hard one to answer, to be honest. I think the main thing that people need to realise, and the main people that maybe have a bit of an actual opportunity to change things, is parents. Just by getting your child involved in something that they enjoy. It's not about forcing themselves into whatever sport, but if you have a young girl that maybe she's put interest into something, pursue that. And if there is a barrier for whatever reason, then do what you can to help her get over it if she can't do it herself. I mean, I know myself, I'm in sport 8 years. I wouldn't probably be here if it wasn't for my parents, the way I was brought up, the way I regarded opportunities. So I think if you're a parent, you need to ask, what can you do for your own children?
Yeah, that's another hugely important one. I have 2 small kids, and that's all you want to do. You want to be a good parent for them as well. Rachael, your question, your thoughts for today about what you would like people to take away and ultimately to try to do as we kick this next phase of 20 by 20 on.
Yeah, so for me, it's the language that's used. I think a lot can be learned from the racing industry in the fact that if I write a big winner, the headline on the paper isn't female jockey rides a big winner, lady jockey rides a big winner. It's just Rachael Blackmore jockey rides a big winner. Holly Doyle in England is breaking records, but it's not focused on female side of it. It's your a jockey, and you've achieved something, so you're given accreditation for that. And I think that needs to spread across other channels. I think highlighting the fact that such an achievement is female, and that's why it's a big deal, because a female achieved something. No, it's just an achievement, and the female side of it should not be the highlight of it.
Yeah, well, I hope you're right. When you win the Gold Cup next year and all the headlines are about you, we'll be thrilled to see.
If I win the Gold Cup, they can write whatever they want.
Well, look, that seems like a great place to leave it, because there's so much more to look forward to as well. And look, as always, we really appreciated hearing your thoughts today. Thanks so much for being with us, Casey, Rachael and Niamh.
Thank you.
Thanks.